Hey, I'm Sean Reynolds. I assure you, I'm Sean Reynolds. I know it's dark in this room, but I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weed from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a tough one. And one I would think is kind of fascinating. It's actually interesting, all of the kind of stuff that got brought into this game against the St. Louis Blues team, that we know the history, we know everything that led into this, the Manitoba Miracle, or as they call it down here, the Missouri Meltdown. All the kind of stuff that gets pulled into this game, and the contrasts that I'm seeing between two teams whose approaches and the conversations and everything would make it seem like they are on polar ends of the opposite spectrum, not where they are in the standings, where the St. Louis Blues are now 1 point up on the Winnipeg Jets. So let's talk about it. Let's hop into my shiny new Toyota that I got from Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for the opening drive here. What I'm talking about, and we'll get to the game. I kind of want to handle this more, and then I'll just get into the game with Ken, is that we've talked in the past, and I hope you liked our coverage. I think you did, because I think Ken and I knocked it out of the park, to be honest with you, in our coverage of the St. Louis Blues Winnipeg Jets series in the first round last year, with our analysis and the kind of things that we saw happening. Part of that is just the idea that when you talk to Jim Montgomery, he's such an open book that he kind of gives you everything. And when, outside of giving you very specific, X's and O's and things that would tip the hand of the other coach. But there's so much that happens there in those meetings that you have with the coach, and so much information that you really get kind of like an inside look at things. And the one thing that fascinates me about these two teams, before we kind of get into this game, before we do so on the podcast, but before we even got anywhere close to the game this morning after the morning skates, is talking with Jim Montgomery, and the polar opposite tone around the St. Louis Blues compared to the Winnipeg Jets. Now, there's reason for frustration if you're in St. Louis. They're the 29th ranked offense in the NHL. They are the last place ranked defensive team in the NHL. They had thought that series against the Winnipeg Jets was going to be the beginning of something, and instead it's turned out to be something very different for a team that had thought it had solved its early season doldrums. Apparently the St. Louis Blues team, talking with Jim Montgomery, has had about 4 straight years now where they've had bad starts. They overcame it last year, just got over the playoff line, and then gave the Winnipeg Jets everything that they could handle in that first round. They were thinking continue with that, come out of the gates this season, and now all of a sudden you're a playoff team, right? And I think there's some people out there who would have looked and thought that was a very high possibility. It hasn't turned out that way. The response to that is this kind of, I don't want to say brooding pessimism, but things aren't rosy in St. Louis. They don't talk about things being rosy. They actually talk very bluntly about the players that aren't doing enough. So, for example, Robert Thomas had 6 points in his last 5 games. Now he's got 7 points in his last 6 games because he sets up the winner for the St. Louis Blues on this night. And I'd kind of, thrown that bone to the coach, where you kind of give them an opportunity to talk about the players that are doing well. And his response with Robert Thomas was like, well, I mean, he's one of these guys, and he talked about it, about how the veterans on this team, he feels, a lot of them, Binnington being one of them, Cam Fowler being another one, Colton Parayko being another one, how they've kind of submitted to the frustration that they've felt so far this year, and that's affected the team in certain ways, something they've needed to go through. He talked about, bringing new players into the lineup and having to try and convince these players that, you're going to sound familiar. Jets went through this a couple of years ago. How, you need good defense to get offense. So you're teaching a younger generation of players that he described as highlight players that grow up, watching highlights on Instagram and these things over and over and over again. And that's what they want. So as a coach, he feels in this new day of the NHL, you need to teach those players You need to show them good defense. If you defend like this, then this happens with the puck and you get the opportunity to be that highlight guy. But it was not a rosy outlook. It was not like, oh, we're just about to turn things around and, oh, things are better than people think it is. And, I'm going to use this line. I used it in a question the other day, but the night is always darkest before the dawn and things like that. It was a real brutal, rough assessment of a team who's saying things aren't good enough and we need a lot more. And I just found it fascinating because since November 1st, clearly the Winnipeg Jets have been a worse team results-wise than the St. Louis Blues have. And where they are in the standings right now, the Jets have a couple games in hand, so point percentage-wise, they are ahead of where the St. Louis Blues are. But I kind of feel if you're really going to compare these teams and say the Winnipeg Jets are way up here and the St. Louis Blues are way down there, you're really having to split hairs or kind of put together a contrived argument to put that forward. So here you're in a city where the St. Louis Blues are talking about, wow, I mean, are we open to the idea of tearing down or letting go of some guys, where the Winnipeg Jets are on the other side of things, still talking as though they're this contending team. And I just found it fascinating, the intersection that you're finding here of two teams whose results are almost identically the same. And it makes me wonder, are the St. Louis Blues being realists, and do the Winnipeg Jets have their heads in the sand? Or are the Winnipeg Jets applying power of positive thinking that is about to turn this team and send them back into the playoff picture? And are the St. Louis Blues being a pessimistic team that is not really giving them a chance going forward? It puts me in a situation where I'm fascinated to see where the St. Louis Blues go forward from here, because I don't know if you saw my opening. It was the hope from both of these coaches that this game was going to be the kind of game where these two teams would get together, and the muscle memory of what happened in the first round last year was going to jog the memories, remind these teams of what they were at that time, and kind of be a path to getting back to what they were. And if I see this game, I'm thinking that I know it's 1-0. I know that these were two really even teams, and I know I don't lead into, excuses all that often. But one thing that I thought was another fascinating thing, Jim Montgomery was offered the idea that his team is in a bad spot because of injuries, which they are. They've got 5 or 6 of their best players out of the lineup right now due to injury, and he would not go there. He right off the bat turned and said, that's not what's wrong here. That's not the problem here. We're not leaning on excuses to excuse what's happening around here. And I have to be honest, I know that Scott Arniel brought it up the other day and he thought the team's been playing better and, it's the injuries and everything like that. I'm telling you right now, the Winnipeg Jets and their injury situation at the beginning of the season was nowhere near as bad as it is that of the St. Louis Blues in this game here. And what I saw was the St. Louis Blues whose coach removed any excuse they would have for not playing well because injuries are an issue, and saying, listen, you're going to have to go figure this out. And the solutions are in this room, compared to a team that's been, I think, somewhat to a degree hiding behind the injury thing as a way of hiding what's been happening behind the scenes. Tonight, I thought it was evident. It's like I said, the Toby Keith song, not as good as I once was, but good once as I ever was. This is another game, just like the last game that they played, where the Winnipeg Jets had a stretch of hockey right towards the end of the first period, at the beginning of the second, where they were dominant. And I know a whole bunch of you are out there. One of them is my guy Razor, who lives out in Fort St. John, BC, who looks and says, here they come. The Winnipeg Jets are back. There they go. And they can only sustain it for certain segments of the game. They, to me, strike me as a video game character that has like an energy bar. And once that energy bar is depleted, it's not filling back up and they just can't continue on. Outside of that part of this game tonight, I thought the Jets played fairly well when it came to back and forth. But I thought the St. Louis Blues were the team that carried the play. Connor Hellebuyck was clearly the busier of the two goaltenders. It was suggested by one of the people in the broadcast crew today that it was hard to put together a Joel Hofer shutout package because he really wasn't challenged that much on this day. The Winnipeg Jets, when it comes down to it, did not deserve to win this game. It's probably a 4-0 game if A, Connor Hellebuyck isn't playing great, and B, the St. Louis Blues, again, the 29th ranked offense in the league, were missing as many opportunities as they had in this game. If the St. Louis Blues have any finishing touches, I'm saying it's a 4-0 game. So if you want to look at this and you want to believe and say that the Winnipeg Jets were right there in this game, and this is, a game that they should have won or whatever, and you're just using this as an example of hard luck, I think you're doing it with two hands over your eyes, ladies and gentlemen. That's not what happened here tonight, and that kind of false hope isn't solving any problems. That's my take on the whole thing for the Jim Pattison Toyota opening drive. And hey, folks, got a question for you. Well, not a question, but this is December, and this December, it's time to Toyota at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Lease the 2025 Tacoma 4x4 SR5 truck from just $116 weekly for 64 months at 6.59% with $7,699 down and a $1,500 accessory credit. But hurry, the offer ends December 31st. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today. All right, time to bring in the man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny, folks. Oh, 1 second. Here comes Kenny. Did you have a look at this, Kenny? Dallas Paul is our main man who went to a bunch of the Kenny events. Says, just got my new Toyota today. Hopefully he went down and told the folks at Jim Pattison Toyota that Kenny and Renny sent him on the way down there. He's going to be looking good in that bad boy. Probably, well, maybe just as good as Renny is looking. And I wish I could show off the suit a little bit more in this dark room, but it's a Frankie special. You folks all know it. I love the kind of like deep tone to the whole thing. Something I never would have tried until I was, shown the way by Frankie and the boys over at Vittorio Rossi. So if you need to be shown the way, and let's be honest, a lot of you do, you know what to do. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi on why am I drawing a blank? What's
Corridon Avenue?
Corridon Avenue. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Ken,
you got broadcast brain going, buddy.
I do have broadcast brain. Did you see the biggest pregnant pause in history before playing your video? I'm not at the top of my game, nor are Ken. The Winnipeg Jets, who fall 1-0 to a team that was kind of what I had thought ripe for the picking, and based on the way the two coaches were talking, I thought, okay, well, St. Louis seems to be in an even worse state than their standings suggest they are. Yeah, what I saw was a St. Louis Blues team that kind of came out for large stretches of the game, took it to the Winnipeg Jets, survived the push from the Winnipeg Jets when that was happening, and just not enough from a Winnipeg Jets team on this night.
Yeah, well, both coaches had the same intent going into the game, Sean, that they were going to recapture what they saw in that epic 7-game series that ended with a double overtime winner in the Manitoba Miracle. Yet only one team decided to dig into that muscle memory, if you will, Sean. I mean, for two teams who needed to have and display urgency, I only saw urgency from one team in this game, and it wasn't the Winnipeg Jets. Joel Hofer, great job by you in the end. I mean, he flat out said it when you asked him, what did this rivalry game do for you? It brought out the best in us. It's something they haven't done at all. I mean, St. Louis has lost twice to Nashville, I think, in the last couple of weeks here.
It was 7-1 was one
right.
of those.
So this is a team with, as you taught you, I mean, the Jets just saw the team that I think had the worst save percentage in the NHL in the Ottawa Senators, and Linus Ullmark played very well. And today, Joel Hofer, the Winnipegger, was rock solid. But like you said, it was not a tough night for Joel Hofer. It was not a barrage of shots. It was not a plethora of high danger chances. There were not an abundance of second chance opportunities, rebounds around the net, point blank, robbery saves. There were no Linus Ullmark windmills displayed by Joel Hofer in this game. He was just steady. The busiest Joel Hofer was, Sean, was in helping the zone exits for the St. Louis Blues. He was very busy behind the net, active with the puck. He's one of the best puck movers in the NHL. And Sean, quite frankly, I think you'll agree, Joel Hofer is one of the reasons the Jets couldn't get anything going on the forecheck. On the dump ins, Joel Hofer was moving the puck before the opposition could get there. So to me, I think, again, Hofer, anytime you get a shutout, good job by you, and stick taps all around, and it's the 5th of his career. But man, the Jets did not make this a difficult night on him, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Hofer because I thought he had a great effort, but just wasn't busy. And Sean, that's a big indictment on the Jets. They generated enough against Ottawa, I thought. They weren't even close to generating enough in this game against St. Louis. And Sean, as you mentioned, that's against one of the teams that has struggled with their structure and with their defensive play and with whatever you want to call it. Guys coming in and out, guys getting injured. They haven't defended well at all, except Jim Montgomery dialed up the plan and his Blues found a way to get up for their opponent and executed the plan almost to perfection. Outside of not burying one of their power play chances, St. Louis was great in this game, and the Jets were very mediocre, quite frankly. Barely had anybody going. That's what I saw. It was wild. Yeah. I'm shocked by this. And Sean, I read the quotes from Mike McIntyre. I listened to what you guys mentioned on the broadcast about your morning discussions. If that was the Jets trying to tap into the Manitoba Miracle, they got a big problem ahead of them because they needed a minimum of 4 to 6 points on this road trip against Central Division teams. And that task just got a lot tougher by dropping the opener against the Blues and rolling into town where the human steamroller is waiting for them.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up, the degree of difficulty going up, because the Winnipeg Jets heading into this game, one of the stories that we are going to do, and it's one of these and I get this. I'm a guy who questions stats often and how much this, means, because things change whenever, from game to game. But the Winnipeg Jets, if you take and do a mathematical calculation of the teams that they have remaining on their schedule and where they sit in the standings right now, the Winnipeg Jets coming into this game had the 5th toughest schedule remaining for the entirety of the NHL season. The funny part about that, and I guess not very funny if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, is this up until now has been the time for the Winnipeg Jets to make hay, right? And we talked about it last year, and I wanted to be careful not to, when the Jets got out to that 15-1 start, again, I think in their first 20 games, they had played 17 of those 20 games against teams. It was around 17. I don't know the exact number, but it was around 17 of those games had come against teams that were below the playoff line. Well, going out and winning the majority of those games the way the Winnipeg Jets did basically set them up so that by a quarter pole of the season, they'd made the playoffs, right? Yeah. Because they got that done, because they made hay. From that point on, they could refine their game and do what they needed to do, and they just kept on winning against good teams once they got to the good teams. But this year, where the Winnipeg Jets find themselves is through a stretch of hockey where things were going to be easiest for them. And now, to your point, I'm fascinated to see what happens in their next game when they play the Colorado Avalanche, who have just, like you've been saying, absolutely steamrolling teams. But at this stage, and I'll ask you the question of their consistency, I don't necessarily know what to make of this team and where they're able to, find some back-to-back efforts, because, you take a look, and Scott Arniel thought that they were building, and then was kind of building the case that this team is building. They're just not quite getting the results that they need here. hard to argue, or sorry, hard to accept that argument right now when you come off a game where you blow it late, and it should have been one of those things where, yeah, we're building on our effort. We think we were the better team in that Ottawa Senators game. We should have won it, which is what the Winnipeg Jets have been saying since that happened. If you think that you should have won a game and you think that things didn't line up for you, it's your job to go at the next game and absolutely leave a no doubter that you're going to win the next night. And the Winnipeg Jets did the exact opposite of that on this night.
Yeah, this was a chance to rectify the situation, Sean, quite frankly. And hey, I get it. Jets had 3 out of 4 points since Connor Hellebuyck returned. And, you could make the argument they should have or could have had 4, but they didn't. So now suddenly they have 3 of the last 6 points. And Sean, you talked about the standings. I mean, for a team that's 3-5-2 in the last 10, you cannot make up ground by being sub 500. Jets got to go on a ripper here if they want to get moving above the playoff line. Utah had struggled a little bit, but I think they won tonight. So they were already looking at a 4 or 5 point deficit for 8th place as it is. And now they dropped a game that, it was in the sort of gotta have it territory. But guess what? The other team was in gotta have it territory too, and then played one of their best games of the year. So that's a big problem from what I saw. I mean, we've been talking a lot of things about how, top line has been great, and, they have been. Today they weren't as great. They were on the ice for the only 5-on-5 goal against, only goal of the game. There's 3 errors on the goal, and we'll dig into them in a second. But Sean, we talked about how great the Adam Lowry line had been. Today they weren't. I mean, they probably were still the second best line, but they weren't at the same level as they had been. The Nemestikov line, Sean, that had been building according to Cole Perfetti. They had been getting chances. Outside of the redirection, the Nemestikov spinning backhand that Perfetti redirected off the post, I didn't see a lot from the Nemestikov line. And I mean, again, we're not trying to pile on here, but I think that's 1 assist in 21 or 22 games now for Nemestikov. I mean, that's the guy who was the second line center last year. We know he is a capable, a versatile, and an effective player, but he's basically gone a quarter season with 1 assist. That's way too long for a guy who's been a consistent producer. We've talked about Perfetti's issues. We know he had sort of gotten him going a little bit. Today was a game where I don't think he was as effective, didn't get as many puck touches. I saw him battling out there, but the results have been tough to come by. Fourth line, I think Nyquist had a couple of nice plays. I mean, the move that he makes on the shorthanded chance where he sets up Luke Shen. Now, you had a better angle than I did. I think Broberg maybe got a piece of it, but I mean, that was a nice walk around, nice dangle. But again, still looking for his first goal this year. The Jets just have too many players that are not performing at the level they need to be at, to never mind being a contender, to be a playoff team. They don't have enough guys rolling to be a playoff team at this point. Now, they still have 49 games to get that sorted out. But as you mentioned, Sean, it's getting tougher for them, not easier. And you can understand the mentality going into this game. Hellebuyck's back. There should be some stabilization. Once Hayden Fleury's activated, it means their team is fully healthy. I mean, you touched on it. Not having Jordan Kyrou, not having Dylan Holloway, these are 2 of their top scoring wingers. And Sean, it's not like St. Louis racked up 5 or 6 goals. And as you mentioned, they missed a lot of prime beef opportunities, grade A chances where they missed the net or fired it wide or Hellebuyck made a good save. But that should have been that game shouldn't have been close by the stats and by zone time and by everything else. And with that in mind, the Jets power play had opportunities. And yes, at the start of the second period, they did get the game turned around for them momentarily with some momentum, even though they didn't score. But again, it's another game where the power play doesn't cash in. So things that had been bailing them out early in the year when they were 9-3, but not really playing well according to the underlying numbers, those things haven't been there as much. Hellebuyck's been there now that he's been back, but you got to be able to score. I mean, that's as simple as it gets. Scott O'Neill talked about it in the post game. You can't win a game if you don't score, with the exception of a 0-0 game that goes to a shootout and you find a way to win the penalty shot contest.
This is a great comment or a question by TTH Power. Is it speed or just lack of effort? I'll say this, and I think, I've described it in the past as a delicate ecosystem, right? And I think what you're seeing here is the Winnipeg Jets last year just set such a standard that so many of you are used to watching, that anything that doesn't look like full speed crash it out hockey looks like a lack of effort. Now, I'm not saying that the effort is where it was with the Winnipeg Jets last year, but I would suggest what you're seeing from the Jets so far this year is that it is speed, and the lack of the speed that they had last year that slowed down this team has tilted the scales and made it a more frustrating game for the Winnipeg Jets to play. They've had to play more defense than they've had to. Yeah. That kind of tires you out. And if you've ever played sports before, hey, man, you get one of those shifts where you're in the offensive zone and you're getting scoring chance after scoring chance after scoring chance. You just go and go and go and go and go. And you're not worried about going to the bench to get a break. You find that energy when that puck is in front of you and you've got opportunities to score over and over again. Where you feel tired is when you're in your own end and you're defending. So I think THP Power is bringing up a good point in that. Are the Winnipeg Jets, gutting it out as hard as they did last year? No, I don't think they are, but it's nowhere near as easy to gut it out when you're just steamrolling a team and pinning them in their zone and changing and bringing your next guys out fresh who are just steamrolling them, and you're doing whatever you want with the puck over and over and over again. So I know a lot of people are frustrated and they want to look at this and they want to say that this team has just stopped trying. Yeah, I don't agree with that, and I'm not saying that that's exactly what THP is saying here. But that said, I think what you are seeing is a Winnipeg Jets team that is being challenged in a way it was never challenged last year, and probably really wasn't challenged the year before that, or even maybe the year before that. And what you're seeing is how the Winnipeg Jets are responding to that to that challenge right now is not good enough. It's as simple as that. And I talked about Eric Comrie and how I thought Eric Comrie for a lot of these issues or a lot of this time here was not the problem. A lot of people kept saying that, but in the end, you just at some point have to land on it's not good enough. What he was doing, the numbers he was getting, the results the Winnipeg Jets were getting was not good enough. All that said, the Winnipeg Jets effort is not good enough in games like this. You got to find a way to elevate and step above. St. Louis did it tonight. The Winnipeg Jets did not. I wanted to get to a couple of comments here as well, Ken, that I thought were good candidates for the keg. For the Flame and Comfort hot take.
I got one here too.
Okay, here's one, and I'm going to do this, and this is a little bit of self-accountability. This one coming from Are You Ready One, who's calling out Renny, because Renny, after the last game, said the Jets are building their game. That's exactly what I said. Yeah, they're building losses. Can we face facts for a change? The team against Washington, an anomaly. Tonight's team is the real team. Well, if you remember, the game that I was talking about was the Ottawa game. The Washington game, I had wanted to make sure, I thought the Jets played really well, but I wanted to make sure people understand I didn't think that was anywhere near the best representation of the Washington Capitals. They walked into Minnesota and the same thing happened. So they're a team that has a tendency to go up and down. But I did say that about the Ottawa Senators last night. And what I went out kind of, I don't know. I didn't think I was going out on a limb. But what I'm getting burnt by here, because Are You Ready is entirely right. If Renny is telling you last game that the Winnipeg Jets are building, you should expect them to go out and put up a better game the next day. That did not happen here. And right now, the consistency that the Winnipeg Jets are trying to find has been so elusive. And when that consistency is elusive, you open yourself up to the criticisms of people who don't think you're playing hard enough when you get outplayed on a night like tonight and shut out by the number 32 ranked defense in the entire NHL. So let's give it to Renny and Renny's comments from the last show. Renny earns the Flame and Comfort hot take, a retroactive hot take brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. You'll find it will be one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside, folks. You can visit Flame and Comfort, and they will take care of it for you. Okay, let's get.
So hang on, no, sorry. As we're in this, the opposite of a self-fulfilling prophecy. I've earned the Pristine Roofing wake-up call while you were traveling yesterday, Sean, for my boneheaded forgetfulness when we were talking yesterday about the Manitoba Miracle. First question to Scheifele, he gives an answer that's pretty good, but I want him to get a little bit more out of it. Forgetting that Mark was knocked out of the game by Braden Shen, I said, right. As someone who was on the ice, what was it like to see the play develop? And Mark didn't miss a beat. We always talk about Mark's preparation, and he let me know, I wasn't on the ice, Ken. Thanks for reminding me. Do your research. He did it in a good-natured manner, and I give him credit for it. And there was a little bit of a smirk there, and I went up to him afterwards and, apologized. We ask players to be accountable and be prepared. And again, it wasn't that I wasn't prepared, but I had a mental lapse and a breakdown, and he rightfully called me out on it. So I'm getting the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. So
yeah, do you remember, Ken, when we had Juice on this podcast and I asked him about beating the Winnipeg Jets in 2015? He's like, Ken, do you want to tell them or should I? That I wasn't on that team. Pristine Roofing wake-up calls can go in any direction, folks. They can even be pointed at ourselves, which means it's time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down to your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 1-204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call, folks. You will be glad that you did. You know what? I just feel like we need to do as much value add in this program as we can. Here's an interesting one. Braden Shen. I don't know if anyone picked up on it, but we did a story in the show. If you remember the argument, it looked like he and his brother were having on the bench last year. He said that was so overblown by the media. We weren't chirping at each other. We were chirping to each other what we were going to do to the other's teammates if they didn't calm down. So this is kind of hilarious to me, Ken, because Luke Shen, if you remember, that game starts to get run away and Luke Shen starts throwing the body, and Braden Shen doesn't like it because he's thinking it's a 5-1 game. This game is out of hand. I'm not okay with him running around. Now, they've said, and they talked about it in the media, they are not going to go after each other. They're Shen brothers. They will not do that. But everyone else is fair game. And so Braden gives a shout to Luke and says, hey, you're running around a little too much. You need to calm down. And Luke says, or what? And Braden says, well, if you keep doing that, I'm going to go after that guy. And Luke says, you go after that guy and I'll go after that guy. And Braden says, well, you go after that guy, I'll go after that guy. And then the ref eventually comes over and says, guys, keep going or you're going to get a misconduct each. And Braden says, that's my brother. You're going to give me a 10 for yapping at my brother? What are you, our mom? The thing I thought about that was hilarious about that, Ken, is if you go back and you watch that video and the faces of the other players on the team, listening to two
it was funny
axe murderers talking about, hey, if you don't calm down, I'm going to go after that guy. I understood.
Like Braden was in position to say, calm down after the hits. He was leaving his feet on every hit in every game of the first series.
To that point, angry Jets fans who were mad about Braden Shen knocking him out of that series. I was told today and learned the information that, the injury that both those Shen brothers were dealing with, broken ribs for Luke Shen, it turned out to be a torn back muscle by Braden Shen. Guess who gave Braden Shen the torn back mussul? It was Mark Scheifele with a cross check to the back. Back now, I'll give Braden Shen credit because he'd said, listen, it's not like he was trying to do it. You know what I mean? He didn't go do it intentionally. It just caught me in the right spot and it tore a back muscle. I don't know. Maybe people will say, well, he was trying to be intentional when he was getting Scheifele back. But you can see potentially as Jets fans how, as upset as you were about the Mark Scheifele thing happening with Braden Shen, that if you were a Blues fan, you would be thinking that that was a tit for tat situation. I just thought some of the behind the scenes things would be interesting to bring into the conversation here. Okay. Connor Hellebuyck, launch into what he meant to the Winnipeg Jets on this night.
Well, he was our best player, and it wasn't close for who was number two. I'm not even sure who could make a case for number two, to be honest. In the game itself, Sean. I mean, there was, I don't think there was anybody who really. There was one A game performed, and that was by the netminder, and he was exceptional. He was busy. He was making tough saves, looked routine as usual, and any concern that people had about how his body would be holding up coming off of the arthroscopic knee surgery, I think most of those concerns would be alleviated. Now, again, we know that this is going to be something they're going to have to manage still going into the break and coming out of the break. But I just don't see a situation where the Jets have to be super concerned about it. Now, they can't run Hellebuyck into the ground and have him start every game. That's not what I'm advocating for. What I am saying is that this just wasn't a matter of Connor Hellebuyck hustling to get himself back in, and then he's not going to worry about it. We saw how hard he worked on the rehab to get back in 3 weeks. He's going to continue to monitor and listen to his body as he moves along here. But to me, you wonder how it's going to hold up going on a flight. There's swelling and things like that. But it wasn't a factor today for Hellebuyck, and I think that he's giving the Jets a chance to win, even on nights where they're not nearly as good as they need to be. And that would give the Jets, again, I'm not here saying the Jets are automatic to make the playoffs. I think they still have the ingredients of a playoff team because of Hellebuyck, first and foremost, but they have some other elements, but they're not playing to those elements right now. And unless they get sorted out, they're relying on Hellebuyck too much. They're asking him to be Superman. And, they didn't against the Capitals. And, part of that was the reason the team played their best game of the year. But Hellebuyck, it can't just be Hellebuyck is my point here, Sean. As great as Hellebuyck was today and as strong as he's been in the 3 games since he's been back, there's got to be more ingredients to that, holiday festive soup, or else, it's not going to be enough.
There's just a comment here I wanted to address because it's kind of trending in this direction, but here it is. Nick Meta 18 says, I certainly hope not. I was in Winnipeg when it happened the first time. Obviously talking about the Jets leaving. Don't kid yourself. The Jets lose money every year. This is categorically false. Bartley Kivas from CBC sat down and had a conversation with Mark Chipman last year and said that they've never operated at a loss since they returned to Winnipeg.
No. That's not during COVID years. That's
sorry, outside the COVID years, but when they've run and they take whatever profits they make now. So
and reinvest in the building.
Exactly. So it's not like the Winnipeg Jets are taking money and they're like, Scrooge McDuck swimming through like a vault full of gold. They take that money and they reinvest it in the team over and over again. Everything goes back into the team. But this is just like categorically false information about the Jets losing money every year. You can say that, and my guess is the retort by Robert or by the retort by Nick Meta here is going to be, conspiracy theory. Well, that's what they say, this and that or whatever, but categorically wrong, according to Joe from Winnipeg here. I wanted to just weigh in on the Connor Hellebuyck situation here and say, thought he was great on this night. Big and boring in a lot of those situations. Fights on the, if we want to like break into the little things that make him a great goaltender, his fight on the goal line, like the goal line stand, kind of reminiscent of the Winnipeg Jets last year and how they would fight on the opposition team's blue line and how you just couldn't get the puck past him. His fight on the blue line is something else. Got a little bit of help from Dylan Sandberg in a crucial point. The the one that gets by him tonight is one. And you were wanting to break down the errors on that goal. You can do that after this here.
Sure.
But, that one is, opportunity for a player to just kind of like walk in and tee off everything that he has and pick the spot that he wants to. But breakaway stops, cross crease stops. He was kind of all over the place. I will say this. I think the performance that you're seeing from Connor Hellebuyck, and yes, it's a small sample size, but Connor Hellebuyck returns, and the Winnipeg Jets now are 500 basically points percentage-wise, one win and 2 losses with Connor Hellebuyck back. It's not nearly the same thing. Eric Comrie's, wins and losses record was far worse. But I hope that you do see that in the games where we gave Eric Comrie, that Buffalo game is an example, the Montreal game, where we gave Comrie credit for stealing points for the Winnipeg Jets in those games, that we're doing that, and we're trying to, like, the whole purpose of pointing that out was a lot of people were just trying to lay it at the feet of Eric Comrie when things weren't going well for the Winnipeg Jets. And my beef with that, as it always is if you're just ignoring all the things that are going wrong and trying to pin it one place so that it's a nice, clean, simple solution. Well, all of you folks out there who thought that the nice, clean, simple solution was going to be Connor Hellebuyck returning to the lineup and the Jets were going to go on a winning streak, they're 1-1 since he returned. And the one win seems to have come against a Washington Capitals team that's decided to go dozing for the next little while. And then, like you'd said, 2 teams that were kind of prime for the picking, the Winnipeg Jets have lost 2 since. So I think that, there's a little bit of the people who were like really, really trying to stick it to Comrie when things were going wrong, that you should find it in your own personal analysis, the ability to maybe retract slightly off of what you were saying about Eric Comrie. And, well, this Winnipeg Jets team just can't win with him. I don't know what it is, but they just can't. 1-1 is not exactly a stellar result, in spite of the fact that Connor Hellebuyck, since he returned, has shown stellar play.
And then just quickly, I mean, this was an important game for Connor Hellebuyck too, Sean. It didn't go well for him in the series, in the games in St. Louis last year. All 3 of the games, they did not go well. So, I mean, we talked about the Jets, tapping into the series. Well, Connor wanted to make sure the Jets, or that the Blues, saw his best today. And I think that he brought his best. And again, the only goal that beats him, you certainly can't fault him on it. Anyways, and then going into the goal itself, to me, I see 3 breakdowns on the play, and I'm not blaming Hellebuyck, but I think his pass should have been crisper to DeMello. I think the exchange could have been a little bit quicker. I think there's a little bit of, I'm going to say indecision, but I think it could have been moved quicker. I think DeMello needed to move it quicker once it got on his tape. But I think he realized that Buchnevich came and attacked on the forecheck quicker than he was anticipating. And by the time he was trying to rifle it up the boards to Gabe Vilardi for the stretch pass, the puck gets turned over by Buchnevich. It's on the tape of Robert Thomas. Scheifele, I'm not going to call it's not a flyby, because I think Scheifele sees at the last second he needs to get to the boards and try to support DeMello to give him a quicker option. But in that situation, as he's going to the boards, Thomas has already got the puck and Mark kind of curls to the board. So yes, he's in the frame, and, I don't think he's cheating for offense, or I think he's trying to get to the boards to provide an outlet. It just doesn't look good on all 3 situations on that play. Do you disagree with what you saw?
No,
or did you see anything different? Or?
I think you broke it down there pretty darn good. I did want to go in a little bit of a different direction here. I would say, in that, yes, it was tough. Winnipeg Jets make that one mistake. When you're not scoring, those 1 mistakes have a potential to loom large, as the way that one did. You don't need to worry about that, folks. You don't need to worry about scoring, because we know, and you can score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game. While you focus on home sweet home, our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. We all like that. Now, that is what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. And Ken, could you give us a shout out to Sweet Lou?
You bet. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met during the holiday season, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin, at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including this podcast.
Okay, Ken, it was a while ago now that I said I do not see this Winnipeg Jets team fixing its issues or getting to where it wants to be as far as executing its system without making personnel changes. There's a lot of screams for those personnel changes in the chat room right now. C Daddy 9942 says, will this organization ever try to really fix its issues? Chevy is way too dormant. Here's another one, the last one. What's more pressing, 2C or right D to play with 44? Does Chevy have the assets? Randall Ald 613, Randall LD 613
Randall
says,
D.
I get into this at this stage. Okay.
Yep.
A while ago, I was saying that I think that was a time for action back then. The Winnipeg Jets have put themselves in a tough spot here. If you're going to go and start using assets to fix right now stuff, right? Like people are talking about getting a 2C, people are talking about getting a right D, all these different kind of things. If you are going to make those kind of moves, you are going to have to move real assets to get that. So if you're trying to build scoring depth and there seems to be none outside the top line, you have to be open to the idea that the solution isn't just like 2C, here we go, everything falls into place, boom. Yeah. It's that maybe you need to add a couple more options. And if you're going to do that, I think we're having a conversation about this today, Harn and Sammy and myself. Yep. But it seems like the league has gone in a direction. I wonder if Kevin Cheveldayoff is actually an influence in this, in that, you know, Kevin Cheveldayoff is that guy that, okay, if I got to trade a guy, I'll trade him, but I will not trade him until you give me what that asset is worth. Right. And what I think that started to lead to is guys like Quinn Hughes, when Minnesota goes to make that trade, Vancouver's like, these are the demands. And if you want that player, you got to send that there. That's exactly what Minnesota does. They pay the price to get that. It's like getting into the housing market. All you folks who are waiting for it to crash or go down or all this kind of stuff, the housing market is what it is. If you want to live in a house, you got to buy a house. You got to pay the price to buy a house. That's where the Winnipeg Jets are. So if you're solving these problems, the way that people are talking, you are spending assets to fix the problem right now. And I'm at the stage, Ken, where I ask the question, where they are at the season, what's the best case scenario? Can we really expect that the Winnipeg Jets, let's say they go out and they move real quality assets, Braden Yeager types, Chinnikov types, go on and on, up and down the list. Elias Solomonson, go and you start moving and clearing out, your assets to get what you want. And I say this to all you folks out there who are thinking, let's take all our problems and trade them away for someone else's solutions. That's not how it works. You're going to have to move real people to do that. I'm wondering, Ken, at this stage where I think basically your best case scenario is finishing as a wild card team and then needing to try and knock off teams going through the hardest route imaginable, especially if you end up in that 8th seed taking on, probably what's looking like the Colorado Avalanche and then the winner of the Minnesota Wild and the Dallas Stars. At this stage, if you are Kevin Cheveldayoff, how interested in trading to fix this team's woes are you in this situation? And maybe it's another way of me asking, how much of a limbo do the Winnipeg Jets find themselves in? Because if it's not the solution to go all in and try and finish 8th and make a run this year and bargain your future in doing so, I don't think the Jets are close to that, but I don't think they're close to tearing down either. Where do you take the idea that I think the Winnipeg Jets find themselves in a real limbo, and I don't know which direction they go?
Yeah, I mean, we know the direction they're going to go is related to getting better fast because of the age of the core players. But mortgaging the future, well, they're finding out that that's not really a great option right now either. And the other part of that, Sean, that's difficult is, some of the assets aren't. People are saying, well, if you're trying to make a hockey trade, which players have value. Well, the players that have value are the players you don't want to move at this
Right.
point, Sean. So, I mean, to your point, I mean, the Jets aren't going to tank, openly, and they're not going to lose on purpose. They're not going to, trade a bunch of assets. And people are saying, well, if the Jets become a seller, okay, well, they do have some players on expiring contracts, but they don't have a ton of players on expiring contracts that are going to get them 3 first-round picks, in 2026. That's not the level of player that are, in the pending UFA category. I mean, and some people won't want to hear it, but Logan Stanley is one of those pending UFAs. And again, am I saying he has the most value? No, not necessarily. But what I'm saying is he's one of the more productive guys in that UFA category for the Jets. So, I just don't see the Jets getting a first round pick and, a top prospect and a deal for Logan Stanley. I mean, they've invested all of this time, sweat equity in Logan Stanley. They want to keep Logan Stanley most likely. So again, Gustav Nyquist isn't getting you a first round pick. Luke Schen's not getting you a first round pick, even if you decide to move him. So they're sort of in a tough spot, as you mentioned, but at the same time, you want to get better now, knowing you want to be better for the next 5 years, given the nature of those contracts that have been signed. But Sean, that means looking at a different aisle of player. It means they're looking at guys with term, not necessarily, or guys without term that they think they can sign, right? So we've talked about Rasmus Ristolainen a lot. He came back the other day for Philadelphia, was on the ice for 2 goals, played almost 20 minutes. We've been talking about, Rick Tocchet's not tied to Ristolainen the way John Tortorella was. Maybe he's an option. But the only way you're giving up the assets to get Ristolainen, it's not just as a rental. You want him to sign to be Josh Morrissey's partner, most likely for the next little while. So you're not going to be throwing a ton of future assets away for a guy that may not be here beyond this year because of what you mentioned, Sean. Short of getting the 7th seed or the first wild card, the path in the Central does not look great. But at the same time, Sean, it's no picnic in the Pacific where you're either going through the team that's been to the Stanley Cup final twice or a Vegas Golden Knights team that's won a cup recently or an up-and-coming Anaheim team. So it might look like a slightly easier path compared to Colorado, but it's no easy path. And Sean, here's the facts. The 3rd place team in the Central just traded for a top 5, top 6 player in the NHL in Quinn Hughes, certainly a top 10 player. So what does Kevin Cheveldayoff have that he's going to offer to get a top 10 player in the National Hockey League right now? That's a tough ask right now. Somebody sent me a note today about Alex Tuch, Sean. I mean, the price tag going to be high if Buffalo can't sign him. And Jarmo Kekalainen is already on record saying he wants to sign him. And why wouldn't he? He's a local guy for them. And he's a first-line winger. So if you want a first-line winger, you're not just, people are saying, well, if it's a first-round draft pick and a couple first-round draft picks, we'll just give him Hanel, a Lambert, and a first. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not getting it done. I'm sorry. That is not getting it done. This is not a wave the wand situation. And Kevin Cheveldayoff can move out a bunch of, they're not all distressed assets, but he's not just moving distressed assets to get first-line players. That's not how it works.
Right.
So that's not to say he doesn't have to try to do something. I think he will have to try to do something. And even if it is, Sean, I mean, we know what Scott O'Neill said about Brad Lambert, that, he hopes he's still part of the organization. But if it means trading Brad Lambert for someone who needs a change of scenery in another organization, that might be something that would become more appealing, given the fact that the Jets are in a situation where they need to change the mix, with the bottom 9.
I said I don't know where the Winnipeg Jets go from here. I actually have a pretty darn good idea where the Winnipeg Jets go from here. I think they try to add to their lineup just like they did in years past. I don't think, the big swing that you're talking about, I don't know that they have the assets to pull it off, even if they wanted to. And I don't know that they're doing that in that situation because there's too much risk involved with that, too much going out the window. I think the Winnipeg Jets try to do what they've done in the past, and they've honestly always done going back to bringing Stastny back in, where they basically find players that other teams don't want, that they believe that they can get something out of that team can't. Target those players, target those teams, give lower end picks to those teams to bring those guys in and see if you can't make something work out of that. That's the path that I would fully expect the Winnipeg Jets to take. It's a similar path to what they did. That's how you got Brandon Tanev. That's how you got Luke Schenn. That's how you got Nino Niederreiter. That's how you got Vladislav Nemestikov. The Winnipeg Jets lineup is littered with players that other teams were just letting go, that they give draft picks out. And, and clearly people keep bringing up the idea that this team is not hitting on draft picks the way they used to. Well, less swings. What is the Wayne Gretzky quote? You score 0% of the shots that you don't take, right? So they're taking less shots. And every time you don't take that shot, you're taking away an opportunity to try and find a player that comes in. But it's a fascinating spot the Winnipeg Jets find themselves in more and more, because if I'm taking a look at I started the show with the honesty angle thing and the hopeful angle of things. If the Winnipeg Jets were looking at this the same way the St. Louis Blues were looking at their team, that blunt honesty, I would think would sound something like, we're not really sure where to go in this direction right now, because we've got a whole bunch of guys that we re-signed promising that we were going to compete for the entire time that they were here. And all of a sudden, all these guys have a whole bunch of time left on their deals. And some of their deals haven't even started. And we find ourselves in a really tough spot right now, where our scoring is extremely thin, where our system that's made us the superpower that we've been, the superstar team that we've been, is not working anymore. It's going to take some time to get that back. And every little bit of time it takes for us to get that back, the oldest team in the NHL gets a little bit older. This is not an easy fix. It's not an easy direction to go in. It would be drastic to say we're going all in, and it would be drastic to say that you are selling. So right now, I think all eyes go on Kevin Cheveldayoff, where I think Kevin Cheveldayoff is going to do what he's always done, is just steadily hold the wheel and keep driving forward no matter where it takes him. But you can see fans' frustration is starting to boil over in certain directions, and it could be continuing to boil over, not just this year, if things keep going in this direction where Jets are showing no signs of shaking out of it. This could be the beginning of trouble. And we've talked about it before, but this is just another example of a team now that is finding itself in hotly contested games against teams below the playoff line, and for the most part not able to hang with the teams above the playoff line.
Sorry, just last point on that. I mean, everyone's saying the Jets should trade the first round pick. I mean, what if that pick is the top 5 pick that gets you the player that can solve the 2C job?
Right.
Like that. It's
you find yourself
you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth here. I mean, it's a tough spot to be in. It's a pickle. Now,
well, again, yes. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, what an ultimate tough spot to be in, because how are you the team that's talking about throwing out a
getting
first round pick to get some help right now, where you need a lot of help, when you're in a position where that first round pick could be a lottery pick, and then all of a sudden you're in a really, really tough spot. So yeah, there's no easy ways out of this. And I don't know, maybe people should have saw it coming when the storyline going into the year was that the Winnipeg Jets were the oldest team in the league, but it is a tough spot to be in. You know what is not a tough spot to be in is going over and talking with the folks at Myers Drugs, because they will take care of all your pharmaceutical needs, all your health food needs, all your supplemental needs. And as we've talked about multiple times on this show, they are willing to come to you, folks. So if you're at home and you need any of those things, give them a call, because they will take your business and they will bring it right back to you. Fine folks at Myers Drugs. Okay, Ken, Johnson Group got you covered. Play of the game. What do you got?
Well, there were a few there. The one that I sent you, I think it was a classic. It's Dylan DeMello saves another goal. Picks, lifts the stick of Robert Thomas. It was a slap shot from Colton Parayko. that went off the elbow pad of Pavel Bushnevich, and Robert Thomas was staring at an empty cage and figured that he had an empty net. And Dylan DeMello lifted the stick and took him out. And, maybe he got lucky, he avoided an interference call, but his defensive effort saved another goal. And that's why he's racked up another one of the awards from my corner of the Christmas tree office here.
For me, the Johnson Group got you covered play, I think, has to go in the other direction. I forget which defenseman it was. I think it was Cam Fowler. I'm not sure. But Luke Shen gets the opportunity, a backdoor tap, in which I thought there it was. Broberg. There you go. Broberg. Backdoor tap, and I thought that game was a tie game. It's not because Broberg saved the game in that moment. A couple of different got you covered plays of the game. Not often I send them in the other direction, but when you're losing 1-0, you kind of desperate times call for desperate measures. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Folks, you need to look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. What you got, Ken?
I think it's a Hellebuyck save on Braden Shen on the breakaway. There were a couple of great candidates. The one on Logan Mailloux was probably a tougher save given the circumstances. Backside play, really good pass. Hellebuyck has to push over. But I do think it was the Hellebuyck breakaway is what I'm going to go with.
I think you're right on the Logan Mailloux. That's just one of those ones it's like a big and boring kind of save there. The one thing that I think actually served the St. Louis Blues really well last year in the playoffs is when they did get opportunities on Connor Hellebuyck, you realize that even if it doesn't look like he's got a chance, you got to put it right on the inside of the post. And Logan Mailloux, a younger player, I think he's just got one NHL goal so far, falls into the idea that it's a cross ice pass and you've got the whole net to yourself, and throws it into a spot where you'd score on a lot of goalies. Ends up being a shoulder save on Connor Hellebuyck. If he goes under the bar or inside the post on that one, it's probably a goal. The degree of difficulty goes up when you're facing Connor Hellebuyck, and it no doubt did in that moment. That's the hashtag. That's mine. That's Ken's hashtag the keg saves of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. It matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate, usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations there in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And the winner from our last show, that would be Lauren Finley. Lauren, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate, usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations there in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. Ken, anything to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah, just a quick little Civic Pride special here. The Altona Maroons are a big part of my life. It's the minor hockey system I grew up in. It's the senior team I played in until I was 34 years old. The franchise folded a couple of years ago, but they've been working hard to get a junior team in town, and they will be joining the Capital Region Junior League for the 26-27 season. It still needs ratification, but they were, granted the franchise, informally here recently. So shout out to the folks in Altona that are bringing a high level of hockey back to the community. That has meant a great deal to me.
Is that Junior C?
I think it's the Junior B, but I'm pretty sure it's Junior B, but I'd have to double check.
Okay, would that be joining some of the teams like the Selkirk Fishermen and the
I think so.
Okay, excellent stuff, excellent hockey, and soon to be probably good rivals with the St. Malo Warriors.
Indeed,
down in that direction. Okay, that's good stuff.
Happy 50th, Eric Hildebrand as well. One of my
and happy 91st birthday to Barb Arneal.
Yeah, beautiful.
That was one of the first things Scott Arneal said in the coaches meeting today, is he wanted a shout out for her on Hockey Night in Canada. She got that, and even more importantly, she gets one of those shout outs on Kenny and Renny. That's it for us here, folks. On to the next one, wherein the Winnipeg Jets will be facing off against the red hot top of the league Colorado Colorado Avalanche. Before that happens, though, I would say that if you appreciate the conversations that are going on in this space, I would implore you to appreciate and to support our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent, Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Ferlin, Flame and Comfort, Myers Jugs, and of course the Kenny and Renny OGs in the Johnson Group and the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We will talk to you again after the next game. Bye-bye, folks.